you. So how are you and the family doing, mate?
Yeah, very well. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Holding on, you know how it is. So before we get stuck into your rugby story, where was home for you as a kid, and who lived at home with you?
Huddersfield. So
Right.
grew up with obviously my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
And my brother, older brother, 2 years older than me. So four of us in the household with plenty of animals, dogs. I love my dogs. So yeah, that was what I grew up with in Huddersfield.
Right. So was there a bit of a competitive edge there at home, a bit of knee rugby or out like that in the living room?
My dad was more into football.
Okay.
He played a little bit of rugby. Don't get me wrong, he was a goalkeeper in football and he liked the rough and tumble of rugby. My brother played rugby as well, but strange relationship, you know how brothers are, at each other, fighting like cat and dog, never really getting on very well, and any opportunity to punch each other in the head, then we took it. So quite volatile upbringing with me and my brother, not particularly getting on as some siblings do.
Yeah. No, so how did rugby get introduced to you, and where was your first club, mate?
Yeah, my brother started playing rugby, and then he ended up playing for Huddersfield Schools in 1985, the pre-Challenge Cup game. Right. So Darren Turner, Nathan Sykes, they were involved in that team, playing down at Wembley. I wasn't playing, I was 9 years old at the time. And then, I didn't go down to Wembley, but hearing about the experience, and then it was a case of, I wouldn't mind having a go at rugby. So my local team was Huddersfield YMCA, which was rugby union.
Yeah.
So I ended up just going up there, just for a bit of a runabout and just to see how it went. And still did football, still got into it. I did as many sports as possible as a kid.
Yeah.
Very, very sport orientated, not very academic. So sport was a big part of my life as a young kid, and rugby was one of them.
Yeah. So we'll touch on all the achievements and how far you got later on, but playing the multi-sports, Keith, do you reckon that helped with each sport playing the other sports? Usually
it's something that I promote. I've got an older daughter who's 22, and I've got a 5-year-old at the moment, and I'm one of the. It's getting involved as many things as possible. I'm a big believer in that because there's a lot of adaptable skills and transferable skills, and I know from playing rugby and some of the coaching stuff that we've done even in Great Britain camp, doing netball and hand-eye coordination and that type of thing. So there is a lot of transferable skills that can be brought into rugby. So as sporty as possible, as many things as possible, and then find what fits. And at the time, it happened to be rugby for me.
Right, and also off the field as well, mate, as we'll touch on in a bit as well, but it transfers into your leadership roles and communicating with people, which is key, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely.
So was the rugby, with you playing rugby union, was there a town team for you out like that, or schoolboy rugby, mate, when you were probably, what would you have been, year 6 or 10, 11? Was there anything like a town team for you then?
There was, as in town team, do you mean a professional team, as in?
No, so like your school, so your last year at junior school, would you have had like a combined schools team to represent like a Huddersfield town team?
Not that I can recall.
No.
Not that I can recall. I've remembering last week's quite challenging.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Back to when I was as that age, it's
it was only last week. So
moisturiser, it's making me look a bit younger than what I am.
So did the rugby help with the transition into high school, mate? And how did you find that transition?
Like I said, I wasn't very academic. So sport was a little bit of focus, because I didn't enjoy school. And I didn't, to be honest, I was a bit of a truanter. My dad worked all hours, God sends. That was his way of providing for his family, and that's how it was back then. He was a truck driver, HCV truck driver, and he used to work. And his mentality was to provide for his family, was to put food on the table and clothes on his family. So he worked a lot of hours. So it was hardly at home, and my mum couldn't control me and my brother. So we basically ran the roost because, like I said, my dad would leave on a Sunday evening, or Monday morning, early Monday morning, and not come back until Friday night or Saturday morning. Because he was on the road all the time, working, like I say, 80, 90 hours a week. So
dodging tackles.
Pardon?
Doing dodgy tachographs before it was the card.
I'm going to say they didn't have tachographs back then. Going back to when they used to have grandfather to prove that you could drive an HGV and they give you the licence. So he used to do a lot of hours, and that was his way of providing for his family, because it was the man's, in society, it was the man's job to provide for his family. Everything's changed now. And my mum stayed at home, and she couldn't manage us. She couldn't manage me and my brother. So we basically did what we wanted. And if I didn't want to go to school, I didn't go to school. So education wasn't on the forefront. So when it came to a little bit of sport, it was the one thing that I got a bit of praise for at school, rather than the education aspect, which I believed I wasn't good at. But I also didn't have the self-belief or the motivation or the desire to do it. I think that's one of the big things. We can talk about positive influences, and because parents, like I said, providing in different ways, and school were completely different to what it is now. I was allowed to do what I needed to do and what I wanted to do, and the retributions were my dad would come home and I'd get the slipper or I'd get the belt, and that was normalised back then. But it didn't affect me. It didn't do anything to me. It was just a quick form of punishment that wasn't, it didn't really do anything to me. So I got that good release from sport, and I sort of like got a few praises, from the teachers at sport, and got, a few pats on the back, where I never got for my education. But, looking back on it, it was totally understandable, totally all my decisions. I just focused on the sport aspect of school. And when it came to the other elements of it, I just wasn't bothered, and I didn't have any motivation to do it. So I didn't do it. And that was a choice that I made at that time. It's
hindsight as well, Keith, isn't it? It's
amazing.
You underestimate it, don't you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They always say, teachers always say school was the best days of your life. To be honest, because of the career that I've had, I'm very fortunate that I've had a superb career in rugby. I hated school, absolutely hated school, and very fortunate to do a job that I love doing, and that was sport. So school weren't the best days of my life.
So going through school, mate, how did you find the standard of school rugby compared to club rugby?
Like I said, I was rugby union, so the club aspect wasn't. It was quite, rugby union was quite big in Huddersfield, so the standard was quite high. So we used to go travelling a fair bit, and there were plenty of teams that we used to play against at school. It wasn't a great standard. There weren't that many games that we played, but there were the odd few. So rugby league was just played at school every now and again, not week in, week out. And then rugby union at the weekend, and also football as well. So I also played for the school football team, and also played for a local football team as well. So I was technically doing both for club and school when I could fit it in.
Yeah. And position-wise, where would you have played in rugby union? You playing 13, would you?
Still centre, yes. I played a bit of flanker, open side flanker as well. So, still, I used to swap a little bit in between inside and outside centre. Sometimes for the crash ball, then sometimes go on the... But it wasn't as structured as it is. You talk about centres where you're inside and outside. When you're playing as kids, it's a case of you just tend to... You're allowed to roam, aren't you, in rugby union? Rugby league, you tend to be set left and right as a centre. So rugby union, it used to be a case of just floating about and just working with each other.
Yeah, a bit of a free roll.
Yeah. Which was one of the good things about rugby union. You weren't specific to a certain side. You could do technically what you needed to do, whichever side. Obviously, the ruck was. You could go to wherever you wanted to, the other side of the field.
Yeah. Did you feel involved enough at centre, mate, or is that where you used to flick into the back row and get stuck in that way?
I think I learned very early, at a very early age, to make certain people my best mate, as in certain individuals, and this is something that I try to coach. Centre's one of them in rugby league. Centre's one of them positions where if you don't, it's hard to find the ball. It's hard to go looking for the ball. It's not like a winger that you can go wandering at times early on and the ball gets kicked to you and you've got them opportunities. In centre, if you've not got people that can get you the ball, you're not going to get the ball. So making your dummy half a real good friend, making your back rower, coaching him the ability to be able to pass. Because there's many back rowers that I see that don't pass that often. So the centre's not getting any ball as well. So you've got to make certain individuals your best mates. And then when you do get that ball, you've got to make something happen. So you've got to want them to give. There's got to be a reason why they give you the ball. Yeah. So developing certain aspects of my game which could promote, and an offload is one of the easiest ways to promote something in a game of rugby league. And I ended up becoming I'd like to think a little bit of a master of it in focusing on that side. Passing wasn't the biggest skill that I had, but I could offload the ball because of my size, because of my strength, and a little bit of the speed and agility that I had as well. So you can still always create something quite easy with a little flick of the ball. We talk about Matthew Gidley-esque, how sucking people in and doing a nice little offload can still create something without having speed, without having agility, without having other aspects. So I learned to be quite a good provider to my wingers quite early on, and not looking for the tries. If my winger scored a try, I saw that as a win for me.
Job done. Yeah.
I saw that as a win for me, or even my fullback or my halfback that would come around. So I saw a try assist as important as me scoring a try. So as long as I was providing and trying to create as well, it was something that if I'm providing for other people, then there's still an opportunity they're going to want to get me the ball as well. So I learned that quite at an early age in rugby league. When it came to rugby union as a kid, it's same in rugby league as well. The better kids tend to get the ball anyway.
Yeah.
You see teams in rugby league where there's a guy that's a lot bigger than the rest. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's got more skill, speed, agility. He's just bigger and stronger, and he can push people out of the way, and he tends to get a lot more of the ball.
Yeah.
And you tend to see them going to half-back positions, not because they necessarily got great skill, just because they can create something, or they can cause some damage, or they can create an opportunity for the teams to win. So in rugby union, it tended to be I used to get a fair bit of the ball anyway because I was reasonably good. So the ball naturally came to me.
Find its way to you, yeah. So as a kid then, mate, you're talking about them relationships. They don't just come, did he? So what would you have to do to create that? So say we'll touch base with rugby league first. How do you ask your winger to trust you enough to hug his touchline?
Yeah, it's building relationships. We talk a lot about relationships. It's understanding strengths and weaknesses. Like I say, you've got to. If I've got a weakness of passing, my wingers, obviously on my left-hand side, and I'm left-handed, so me passing right to left is not my natural side. So that's something that I had to predominantly practice. So there'd be no. Don't get me wrong, there's no point me saying to my winger, I need you to stand 20 metres away because I'm going to give you a wide spin pass. It's not going to happen. Every now and again, it'd come off or you try it or something. But they will understand that I need them close by. They need to be in a position where I can still get them the ball. But a lot of the time I'm a left-hand carry, right-hand fence, so there's the left-hand flick, but there's also the flick back inside. So understanding what I can create and then reading that, because I knew that if I were close to or getting into a position where I could offload, I'd have somebody on my left-hand side and somebody on my right side. And that'd either be an halfback or a fullback or the winger on the left side, or the winger might drop under to come back to get offload on the inside. So understanding that. But then me also knowing what their strengths are.
Yeah.
If they've got a little bit of speed, I can give them an early pass and stuff like that. And it's a lot about strengths and weaknesses. What people, like I said, if you've got a fullback that doesn't pass, you've got to work on it. But there's no point then waiting for them to pass you the ball. Yes, Harris was a fullback that could pass you the ball anywhere on the field. So he could have been on the right edge 30, 40 metres away, and I could still stand on the left-hand touch line, and I knew that he could still get me the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So understanding and having that, I know that the ball might not be around me, but I know that he potentially can still get me this ball because he's got that skill to be able to pass that 30, 40 metres away from. So, yeah, I'm a big believer in understanding people's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, no, and like you said, that takes time, especially as a kid. Everyone wants the ball, don't they? It is something you can work on, obviously.
Yeah, and it's the old adage of you tend to ask people what they're good at, and they don't come up with many things, but you ask people's weaknesses, and they probably could fire off loads of things.
Yeah.
And, people, and as a coach now, you ask a lot of players what their strengths and weaknesses are, and some people struggle to tell you. Because of potentially that vulnerability or that acceptance of, I'm pretty crap at this, I'm pretty crap on that side. Rather than sometimes just having that vulnerability and that acceptance of, this is something that I need to work on, and then basically just going out there and trying to do it.
Yeah. So did you take any rep boxes through school, mate? Did you play any Yorkshire Rugby Union or out like that?
None at all.
No. Did it bother you?
No, like I say, it's my personality as a child was I wasn't motivated in a lot of ways. I wasn't from an early age. I used to get, because my brother used to play 2 years above me, and he used to get, Keith's good, but his brother's better. Always used to get that. We were 2 years older than me, so naturally he's going to be better in certain aspects. But whenever it came to then going for the Yorkshire trials and the rep rugby, I'd seem to get to a certain point, and then I'd never seem to just kick on or get. It just felt like there was something always stopping me.
Yeah.
So then it was just like, well, I'm just playing rugby because I enjoy it. I'm playing rugby because it's part of what I do. I enjoy the sport, and so I never had dreams and aspirations. Like you speak to Kevin Sinfield, as soon as he touched the rugby ball, he wanted to play professional rugby. I wasn't like that, and I suppose that was my downfall as a kid, is the fact that I wasn't motivated. Like we talk about careers, we talk about sport. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just sort of like floated along. I just floated along in life, and just whenever something came along, I just did it. Or
if it happened, it happened. Yeah,
like when I left school, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school, but I obviously didn't want to carry on going to sixth form or college. So my dad got me a job at where he worked as a HGV mechanic. I've never had any interest in anything or out, but it was like, no, it's a job. I'll just go do that. As a youth training scheme, £29.50 a week. But it was.
Felt like a king with that, though.
It's what, Sarah?
Do you feel like a king with that? Just under 30 quid in your pocket?
A week. Yeah. I know some big bucks there, didn't they? But, I was still a worker in certain aspects, because then I got into the scotching and working a little bit of cash in hand, and I'd do, I suppose, because I've seen how my dad was as a grafter, because £29.50 a week at the time, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
Even in society's cash values back then. So I used to work a lot of extra overtime. So I'd be working sometimes till 2, 3 in the morning, doing a lot of extra scotching work and just trying to work a little bit, cash in hand and getting a little bit of extra money. So I suppose from seeing my dad having that work ethic, I sort of like had that mentality a little bit when it came to work, but it wasn't a passion, it wasn't a purpose, it wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was something that I had to do, needed to do to get money. And then obviously looking, that was my future. That was potentially my future. I was going to be an HGV mechanic for the rest of my life. So that was where I was looking at going.
Right. So how did the Sheffield move come around? What was the process of that, mate? How did they reach out to you?
I believe sometimes it is about being in the right place at the right time. So I was still playing rugby union at Huddersfield once, when I was on this YTS, And then the coaches that done it since we were 9 years old, it were the same coaches up until 16 years old. They just had enough. They'd been doing it for so long that they then wanted some of the kids had grown up, and some of the kids weren't playing anymore, and they just wanted their family time. So the side sort of like fell apart.
Right.
The truck drivers at the organisation that I was working at used to play. He played rugby league. He played at Milnes Bridge, which at the time was Pennine League Division 4. So the standard wasn't great. But he just said to me, he said, I hear that you play a bit of rugby. Do you want to come down? So it was like, right, well, rugby union team's folded. I'll go down to this team, and I'll just carry on playing again, just for the crack and just for the fun. Ended up playing really well in them teams, in that team, and causing a little bit of a stir. And some of the coaches, one of the coaches knew scouts at Huddersfield, and one of the other coaches knew a scout at Sheffield, which was Glenn Knight. And it was a case of having a word, and I think Huddersfield showed no interest. And at Sheffield, because Sheffield was there was a mid-table Super League team, but they didn't have big finances, they didn't have big money, they weren't the Wigans, the Leeds that had money, and if they needed to buy a player, they could. They had to find players to develop. So it was just a case of just come and play for our academy. That's all it was, an invite to play for their academy. And I thought it was a big thing at the time, not thinking that it was, because I didn't know much about academies and scholarships. They didn't really have scholarships, but academies, reserve grade and alliance rugby, it was back then. So I didn't know much about that, and just end up going to Sheffield and having a few sessions and thinking, you know what, this is actually a good gig. This is actually all right. Ended up, playing a few games for the academy, and all of a sudden I started playing really well. People started talking about me, but even in rugby league, I still never did any rep rugby.
Right.
I never played for GB Academy, never played for all them type of teams until I played international as a 20-year-old. So even as a kid, even as a kid, I still weren't making the rep teams for the academies. But in that Sheffield team, I was quite a standout player. And Gary Everington, the chief executive coach, and everything else at the time, with Kath Everington as well, who probably ran more of the ship than what he did. And because it was a case of they didn't have big money, it was worth them to take a bit of a punt on a young kid, because they didn't offer me much money. My first contract were £1,000 a year, so, but even as a kid, for me, that was like, I'm on £29.50 a week. Yeah. Somebody's offering me £1,000 a year to play, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on. I'll take that all day long. So I was buzzing by that. 3-year contract on £1,000 a year. So I didn't play it for the money.
Initially, the love of the game, innit? And
it was just a little, I'm getting paid to play rugby, which I would be playing amateur anyway. So I might as well just take this money, this contract. And then, sort of like the rest is sort of like history a little bit.
Yeah. So are you, when you're having a meeting about the contract, and the money really is irrelevant, like you said, you were going to play anywhere, weren't you? So it doesn't really matter. But are you understanding what you're going into? Because it is a different ball game to academy rugby, isn't it? Without being rude to the academy.
At the time, it was still training 2 nights a week. Yeah. Like I did with amateur rugby. The only difference was, I suppose, the facilities were a lot better. The coaching as well was better to a standard, but it was still 2 nights a week and still something that I was used to. So it wasn't it was more of a pain in the ass, because driving to Sheffield, I wasn't actually driving. Glenn Knight was a huge help for me, and it was a little bit of a mentor for me. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, which we speak about a lot, and you don't sometimes appreciate some of the things that people do for you. And Glenn Knight, who was a coach at Sheffield Academy, who was from Huddersfield, was a huge influence on my rugby career, and he used to pick me up, he used to take me training, he used to drop me off, and I used to do that for a few of the kids around them areas. So he was a huge influence on my professional career. But it was still Sheffield. It was still a low, mid to low end Super League team at that time, and their academy kids were people that they'd pick up because Leeds could get whoever they wanted, Wigan, all the bigger teams. People wanted to go play for them, so then it was a case of the other teams around the bottom end and
pick up the rough diamonds.
Amateur rugby in Sheffield still isn't very big. There's still only one or two teams, so they've got to pick up people that are willing to travel. So these are all kids that have probably been turned down by Leeds or turned down by casts from them local areas. So then they were picking up other players like Richard Chapman from Dewsbury, Ryan Sheridan, Dewsbury, Dean Walford were Dewsbury area. Them people. So they were potentially people that might have been turned down by other academies, and then it was like a little bit of, well, Sheffield will take that punt on people because they've not got them big finances that they're going to go out, and you always get that diamond in the rough. And to be fair, quite a few of our academy players at that time actually went on and had good rugby careers. Rugby careers, whether it be in the Championship or Super League. So, even though it's way out of the catchment area, they still developed a lot of good players that went on to provide, to be players for other Championship and Super League teams as well.
Yeah. And when you're there, Keith, can you see that these names have that ability? Even when you're a young lad, can you see that there is definitely talent there that you can kick on and do something with?
Yeah, and a lot of it, you talk about mentality, and it's always a tough age when it gets to that 15, 16-year-old, because some kids have shot up and grown up, and then some kids are still developing. But seeing that skill element is good. Like as a kid, to be honest, my skill wasn't the greatest. That was something that I had to hugely develop for me as a player. So there's always certain traits that you can pick up in certain kids and certain people. And our academy side at that time, like I said, some people were probably out to prove points, like I said, because they've been turned by other academies, turned down, and they had points to
released
prove.
And stuff. Yeah.
Where I was just in that environment to play, and then the door opened. But like I say, a lot of that was potentially being in the right place at the right time, and a lot of luck. Because if them coaches at Huddersfield YMCA hadn't have disbanded that team, I would still be a Huddersfield YMCA player.
Yeah.
So that would have been my life would have took a whole different turn, and then I wouldn't have gone and played, a little bit more rugby league.
Just a bit.
So you could say I'm a big believer in some, being in the right place at the right time. But then when them doors do open, it's about making the most of them opportunities.
Yeah. So when did that door open, and how did it come about, mate?
I was playing. Paul Daly came in as a academy coach, and I remember him. Great bloke, Paul Daly. Still involved at Leeds now. He's mad as a box of frogs. He's absolute diamond of a bloke. And he came up to me and said, "I was going to make you captain, but I don't believe that you're going to be in this team. You're going to be playing much in this team," because we had reserve grade, which was Alliance. And the first team as well, and he said, "I'm not going to make you captain because I've got so much belief that I don't believe that you're going to be playing in this academy team much." So I was doing a lot of academy and reserve grade Alliance rugby, and it was always great playing the Alliance rugby because you get 50 quid for a win and you get a bit as well. So a bit of an extra bonus, and as a young kid again, not earning much. Like somebody were giving me pots of cash again, but it would just sort of like carried on progressing and at quite a quick rate. quite a quick rate. And I remembered I made my first team debut when they were taking a punt on me with Sheffield, and it was a pre-season game, and there were three all academy reserves and first team were all playing on the same day,
Right.
which were a pre-season warm-up game. I played a full game of academy, and then they put me on the bench for the first team. So my first game of first team rugby was after playing a full game of academy rugby, literally 2.5 hours, 3 hours before the first team game.
As you do.
Yeah. And, I just seemed to fit in. It just seemed to be natural. It just seemed to, you know what I mean? And then I talk about self-belief, and when it came to school and education and drive and everything, I didn't have that self-belief in myself. And now, because coaches were saying, you know what, you've got a real good opportunity here. You've got an opportunity to potentially do something here or create something yourself. And I suppose I started to believe them. And that's when my mentality changed dramatically, rather than just doing it for a little bit of, just doing it for a little bit of extra cash and doing it because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, I could actually do this as a job. I could do this as a job. Sheffield was still part-time when I started. We're going back pre-Super League. So there weren't many that were full-time players. But an opportunity, Gary came to me, I think it was about 95, before Super League, or 94 maybe, before Super League started, and offered me an opportunity to go full-time. So I moved down to Sheffield, and it gave me the opportunity to do a little bit more training on myself, because the team worked full-time and focused a little bit more on rugby. I didn't do that for much. I didn't do that for long, because it weren't the right time for me. It weren't the right time for me, but it gave me a little bit more insight into thinking I could potentially do this as a job. And then when Super League came around, there was that opportunity when everybody went full-time. Every team was full-time in 96. And even then, we're not talking a lot of money. I think I went full-time, I think, for maybe 14 grand. Yeah. So we weren't talking, I was taking a pay cut from the work that I was doing to come play professional rugby. But the insight and the mindset of me had changed so dramatically that it was like, you know, I've got a real good opportunity to potentially do something with my life here, because career-wise, anything else, I'm not gonna. Don't get me wrong, you can still have an outstanding career doing, we call it normal work, but this is an opportunity to do what a lot of people dream of. You know, so it was like, I've got to get serious about this shit. I'm going to start getting serious about this. And, you know, like I say, the drive and my mentality was just, but a lot of that came down to self-belief, but also the people around me giving me potentially, you know, believing in me. And that was huge for me at that time. And looking back at it, you don't think it's much. And I didn't think it was much at that time. And after retiring, you look back on certain aspects of your life that's helped create that path that you've gone on. You know, some of them people that were around me at that time were a huge influence and a huge part of that.
Yeah. And do you think maybe because it wasn't your dream, like it might have been for Kev, like you said, do you reckon you probably enjoyed and embraced it a little bit more because it was all just like snowballing sort of thing? Because you've said that yourself, it happened really quick and fast, didn't it? And
yes, I never put the pressure on myself. It wasn't it wasn't a be all and end all. Like I say, you know, with the rugby union, getting to certain periods of the Yorkshire trials and the representative trials and then not progressing, it was just like, oh well, there's no what I can do about it. So it is what it is. You know, at the time you're pissed off and you're not happy about it, but then it ends up just being normalised. So there was no pressure on me, and there was never any expectations. I wasn't as a big money signing. There wasn't a lot of resources being put into me, so there was no pressure to perform. There was no this label of you are Keith Senior, you are going to be the next big thing.
Yeah,
I didn't have any of that. It was just get out there, just enjoy your rugby, and do what you need to do. And
when did you feel like that become a thing?
When
we won't move on too fast, but when did you feel like your name become that type of name where you are expected to do that bit of footwork and the back door or to make things happen?
I think Gary Etherington once referred to me as the next Darryl Powell. Darryl Powell playing centre at Sheffield. Well, he played a little bit of halfback, played a little bit of centre as well, and he referred to me as the next Darryl Powell. And then it was like Darryl Powell, Great Britain international. He'd done a lot in the game. And then it was like, bloody hell, I'm being referred to as, somebody that is of very high standing in the game. And it was like, oof, I don't get it. I don't see it. What's going on? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, people are starting to talk about me, a little bit. And that was when it sort of like progressed a little bit more from there.
Right. So obviously one of the big games, mate, and it come early in your career that people remember and speak about is the PSG game. So how was the week building up to that, and what was the media coverage like, and how did you deal with it?
I'd played 2 years first team prior to that, so it was still winter season, so I'd played 93, 94. I played quite a few games then. 94, 95 season, I'd not really played many games. I picked up a back injury and didn't really play that many games. Yeah. So I was a fringe player. I was a fringe player. And I remember when it was an opportunity to go full time, because you have your squad numbers. I was one of them kids that they said to me, what squad number do you want? And it was like, well, I'm going to be 20 that year, so can I have squad number 20? It was a case of you potentially not going to play much. Yeah. Not in you always look at the starting 13 or 17, whatever it is of the numbers and think. And again, I was a squad player. I was on the bench for that first game, which was, again, me and Mark Aston were on the bench. So, I was a back, he was an half back. And there were no pressure on me. It was quite surreal because I wasn't used to the big razzmatazz of Super League. I wasn't a known player. I wasn't a named player. So there wasn't, I don't believe that there's them pressures and the expectations. Yeah. Like Paul Sculthorpe at that time, Yestin Harris at that time, they're like my age bracket, Kieran Cunningham at that time, their names were getting thrown about all over the place. Yeah. They were playing, they were in the starting teams, whereas I was a squad number. I was a squad player that had been selected to go on the bench for that first game. And it was only the second time I'd ever been abroad. My holiday destination used to be the East Coast. My grandma and granddad used to own a caravan park in Easington. So that was where my holiday destination was every year. So I'd been abroad once on holiday with my parents when I was 16, the first time I'd ever been on a plane and abroad. So jumping on a plane to go to Paris, it was more excitement. Yeah. Going to see new areas, new places, new countries, as a kid, and being able to travel a little bit of the world playing rugby. So it was more the excitement of it all rather than the rugby element taking over. It were like life experiences for me, which I'd never had. So I probably got more caught up in that than the actual seriousness of it being a first ever Super League game. It didn't mean that much at that time. It was like, so we'd gone straight from a season, had a month pre-season to build up into the first game of Super League. There were 2 seasons in one. Yeah. So you were constantly playing rugby. and it, like all of a sudden it were there. It wasn't like we had a big 3-4 month build up to the first game of Super League. It was like it were end of 95-96 season, right? Super League now. This is the first game, and it had been hyped up, but I'd not got involved in that hype up of it because it was just another game of rugby. It wasn't like a big thing because it was Super League and it's a new concept. Right now, it's it's been going for 20 odd years. It's the big thing now, but it was like normal. It was another game of rugby. It was an opportunity to travel a little bit of the world, and we didn't know what to expect on the day of the game. Getting to the stadium in Paris and then 18,000 fans. Then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this is quite tasty. This
real,
It's a little bit surreal because at Sheffield we didn't have them big crowds. We had the faithful, but I'm probably one of the most relaxed people that you'll ever meet.
Yeah, I can tell that, to be fair, mate. Yeah.
When it's a build up to a game, I was one of them people in changing rooms. I like to have a laugh and a joke. Jamie Peacock would be banging his head against a brick wall, getting himself hyped up, and I were one of them people. I just so chilled. I remember Graham Steadman, one of the first games he coached us at Yorkshire. It was just like, I've never seen anybody so relaxed. It was just like going through the floor, and I don't know why. As soon as the game started, as soon as the game was kicked off, because even for the warm up, I used to love the warm up because I used to enjoy it.
Yeah. And
the game was just like, right, switch on, this is work mode. I'd get involved in the warm-up and have fun and enjoy myself. And then I could just switch it on. Just one of them people that were very fortunate that as soon as I thought, right now,
needed to, you could.
I could do it.
Yeah. And just going back a little bit, mate, did they let you have a wander around Paris and that? Would you know how to go and do the sightseeing, or was it strictly rugby?
Yeah, from what I can remember, there weren't much sightseeing. Even after the game, we stayed in the hotel.
Yeah.
We didn't go out after the game. We stayed in the hotel and had a few beers in the hotel. Right. So, it's. I always have to ask people what happened.
They're some of the best nights, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, working with Mark Aston, working still at Sheffield, and he'll start talking about something that happened 20 years ago, and I'll just look at him and it's like, are you sure that
happened? Yeah, of course it did, yeah.
I need to keep people around me from them times to remind me.
So, we'll go back a little bit. You mentioned that back injury there, mate. Was that the first time you'd had an injury enough to keep you out the team, and how did you cope with that?
Yeah, I think it was just growing pains because I was still a young kid. Yeah, right. I was still a young kid, but it was a little bit of frustration. But I wasn't used to playing week in, week out as in the first team, so it was more of we didn't 100% know what it was. It was sometimes it were right, sometimes it wasn't right, and I think a lot of it was just growing pains because I did shoot up quite a bit, during that period. Like I said, because I was in and out of the first team. I'd run a couple of games together and then I'd be back out again, and they sort of like managed me quite well. Was in, right, you're in. I could still play well, and it'd be like, right, we're pulling you out for this game because of who we're playing, etc., etc. So I got managed quite well in that respect. So again, there were no pressures or demands put on it, and as a young kid, dealing with injuries, it wasn't normalised. I didn't know how to deal with it, so it was, you know what I mean. It wasn't, I've got to play this week. I've got to play this week. I've got to play this week, because even when I was playing well, I'd sometimes still get pulled out, just for that growth and that progression.
Yeah, and obviously, mate, we'll touch on it as we go through your career, but you'd have definitely seen changes in mindsets, recoveries, treatments, and how you looked at if you'd put your hand up and say, I'm not quite right. Because I imagine back in the Sheffield days, you might have got frowned on a little bit for saying, I've got a bit of a niggle here, because of the tough man culture, isn't it? And
Yeah, it's do you know, a lot of that's down to the mentality as well. You're always going to get people that are going to put their hand up when they've still got a niggle. And then there's always going to be people that are going to be a little bit more conscientious and a little bit more safety conscious in that aspect. Yeah, I've played with injuries many times, but I'd still do it now. That was my mentality. Because I enjoyed the game. And you're right, the way how the game's transformed, we still had a culture of a Monday club. We'd play on a Friday, we'd go out on a Friday night after the game, we might go out on a Saturday, we'd have Sunday off, and then we'd be out Monday night as well. So we there's still a little bit of a social culture early on in the Super League era, because we could a little bit more. And again, there weren't them serious pressures, because one team, quite a few teams did it. It was normalised. And when you're a young kid, you can do more things than you can do when you get about.
Yeah, you're invincible, mate, aren't you?
So I still had a lot of good times. I still enjoyed the rugby. I still enjoyed the social aspect. And yeah, there were no sports science to any degree. If you had an injury, you'd get put on the massage machine, and you'd get the ultrasound machine put on you, and that'd be physiotherapy. There'd be no GPSs.
Yeah.
There'd be none of that. You'd have sprint coaches, you'd have the speed coaches, etc. But none of the GPSs, the diet coaches, all that type of thing, because it wasn't as elite as it is now. Or the 1%ers weren't there as much.
But so you'll know yourself, mate. Some teams, they'll have certain people that don't get on, but come 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon when the ball's getting kicked off, you wouldn't have a clue, would you? But them bonds that you made on the Monday night clubs and so on for your career, like your Mad Mondays or your pre-season trips, they go a long way to making them tight games on a Saturday or a Sunday, Friday, Thursday, whenever you play, go your way, don't they?
Yes, you've got to build bonds, you've got to build relationships, and I suppose sometimes, and again, not condoning alcohol, but sometimes you say things that you would not say if you'd not had alcohol, and then sometimes it's like getting a few home truths out about each other, and you potentially respect each other more, rather than talking sometimes behind people's back or having a grudge, or having something to say about something. You might not be that type of person that would naturally say it, and then sometimes you have a beer and it's like, you know what, I think you're a bit of a bell end.
Yeah.
You're a bell end, and then you sort things out and it's right, okay, I don't like you, you don't like me, but we respect each other, we'll still do this and we'll still do that. Or sometimes you become closer mates.
Yeah.
You no matter what, you don't have to like each other, you've just got to respect each other.
Yeah.
Like some people talk about the old Wigan team of the 80s and how they didn't get on, but they won everything. They must have respected each other. Respect goes a long way. You don't have to like people, but you've got to be able to respect each other and recognise certain qualities in them. And that's respect is one of the big things that kept me motivated in a way.
Yeah. You can't go through the depths of pain and putting your body on the line that you guys do and not feel something for each other.
No,
Can you?
That's what I mean. Yeah, you literally do. Rugby's a stupid game. It's an absolute stupid game. Just imagine running into each other as hard as you can and just trying to run over the top of
for an hour and a half.
It's a ridiculous game, but that's why, again, there's only certain people that then go on.
That can play it. Yeah.
Go on to make it, because it can be a brutal game at times, as we know. But you do build them relationships, and that's why a lot of it is related to the military, to not the same extremes, because you've got to have that camaraderie. Like I say, it's not about liking each other, it's about trust and respect. You've got to trust people to know that when something is going to happen, that they're going to give their all, or they're going to do something, because shit happens, mistake happens.
Yeah.
And that's when knowing that, you know, I might make a mistake, but I know that he's got my back and he's going to cover me back and something's going to happen, you know, so it's getting that trust and that relationship and that bond.
Yeah, there's points in every game, mate. You're under the pump, aren't you? And you've got to look round and know you've got each other. So that's what it comes to. Yeah. So you were
that's the thing. You can't play rugby on your own. You can be an exceptional player, but if you've not got them individuals, being an exceptional player might only potentially win you a game if you score a try or something out of the blue. But just having one exceptional player in a team of people that don't work for each other, it's not going to work. It's complementing each other in certain aspects.
So another big moment, mate, in the Sheffield days was the final against Wigan, wasn't it? So how was that whole? I've asked several people this, and I know when you're doing your media week, you say like, and you're probably going to say it now because you relax, but it's not just another game, is it? The week's different, the prep's different, isn't it? So how was the week leading up, and how was that final, and what was it like playing at the original Wembley, mate?
Oh, absolutely superb. Like I said, my brother played there back in 1985, so he got one over me. But, and that's the history and the history and the heritage and everything that goes with it was there. But that season was quite strange for Sheffield because you always set goals at the beginning of the season. You always target certain aspects. And we weren't going to win the title. We weren't going to come top of the table. And I suppose that was, you've always got to have some acceptance. You always want to win your games. You always want to win every game. You always want to win your home games. And sometimes by setting them targets, you can say, we want to make our home place a fortress.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not achievable, especially for a mid-table, bottom-end Super League team. So setting certain targets, we knew that there was a big potential that we could do something in a Challenge Cup final because of a lot of it, again, is down to luck.
Yeah.
The luck of the draw. And early on, we'd focused on having a real good push at winning the Challenge Cup final. That was our mentality for that year. Not to win Super League, not to have a fortress at home, not to have that. Right. We've got an opportunity here because we could potentially do something in the Challenge Cup. We're not going to win this. We're not going to win the league. So you've got that acceptance straight away. So then you can put all your eggs into one basket, and then sometimes mentality and focus changes a little bit for different games. But we, again, had the luck of the draw quite early on, and then all of a sudden we're in the next stage. We're in the next round. We're in the next round. A little bit more self-belief starts coming along. Then we're in the next round again. And then all of a sudden we're in the quarterfinals against Cass, which was the big one. Yeah. Cass had knocked out Bradford, had knocked out Leeds, who were the big guns. Were the big guns at the time. Wigan were the only ones still left in. And we got Cass, and everybody had written us off that day. And it was just like, we've got a real big opportunity to create something here and to achieve something. So our mentality was quite huge, and having that opportunity, like I say, was really, to play at Old Wembley was absolutely outstanding. And yeah, you're right, it's not like any other game. It's not, because everybody dreams of playing in grand finals and Challenge Cup finals because they're the only the two biggest trophies that you can win. Yeah. Then the Australians come over because they see the Challenge. They want to play in a Challenge Cup final. Yeah. So it's just not another game. But I had the mindset of enjoying it, really enjoying the occasion. Mark Aston says something different, and because I remember thinking that when we get there, when you walk out of the tunnel, you normally see stern faces and, you know, the game faces, we'll call it. Yeah. I were walking out and we were enjoying it, taking in the atmosphere, waving to the crowd, because these opportunities don't come round a lot for some people. I've been very fortunate that I've been involved in a lot of these finals, but we were a mid-table, we were a huge team, and we didn't know what that could have been our last game. And it was a lot of people's biggest game of their careers. They've not gone and done anything again in a Challenge Cup final or a grand final or anything like that. So we were enjoying that. We were enjoying that moment because you don't know what's around the corner. Yeah. You don't know when these opportunities could come again. So I absolutely love that experience. It was my first major final. The excitement was just so unreal. It was just so unreal. And I think the giddiness of it all just sort of like took over because you're right. It's not another game. It's not a normal game. It is a big thing. Like I said, some people never play in a Challenge Cup final or they never play in a grand final. Yeah. That happens. We had an opportunity. We were playing in a Challenge Cup final at the old Wembley. I tell you what, I'm enjoying this. I'm taking in as much of this atmosphere as I can, and I'm going to enjoy this occasion. And getting that win, then it just magnifies it.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick ones. So, was there ever a moment in that game where you just felt it was your day that you can remember at all? Or did you have to see it out? Did you feel like you had to play and see it out for the full 80? Because sometimes, mate, you know yourself, you've been in big moments, which we'll touch on soon, but there are games where you just think everything you touch works, doesn't it? And
yeah, we ended up starting off that game and it just, Mark Aston kicked to Nick Pinkney, over Jason Robinson dead, scored a try early on. Pinpoint kick came out and it came off. And then we get another try and then it was just like everything's falling into place a little bit. And then I remember we were just pinned on it. Wigan were throwing everything at us. They'd been in our half for so long that there were pigeons that were starting to roost in the Wigan half down our end. But we just flung everything. We just flung everything into it and we just scrambled and we just held them out and we just held them out and just held them out. And then you could see the frustration starting to build in the Wigan team. And it was just like another turn of that kick. We've got him even more here now. So I remember Andy Farrell gets over the line, says he scores a try, and the referee says, and he proper spat his dummy out, proper stamping his feet and effing and whining and shouting and all. This is working. This is frustrating. And when frustration starts coming into it, that's when you start potentially making more errors or you start pushing that play that you wouldn't not ordinarily do. And you start playing on emotion rather than the composure aspect and playing with your brains. And we were sort of like composed all the way through that and then just grew and grew and grew, with that defensive effort from that period of the game.
Yeah, and do you reckon whether you'd have won or lost, would that have set a little standard and give you a taste of what, like, as much as you didn't ever imagine rugby league being a career, did that sort of wake you up and go, this is a bit of me, these big occasions? Because you can either sink or swim, Keith, can't you?
Yeah. Still being involved in the build-up and the big occasion before. And like I said, the icing on the cake is the win. Some people have been challenged, but it's still a great experience. It's still an outstanding experience. It's just not quite topped off. It doesn't take it away from it. Doesn't take away from the fact that you've played in a big game in a Challenge Cup final. Just because you've not won, but obviously the after celebrations and especially at Sheffield and the way how we'd been written off, we were the biggest odds-on team to lose a Challenge Cup final. Wigan had been so hyped up. Ray French, no way these are going to lose this game. There's no way Sheffield are ever going to win this game. And again, there were no pressure on us. I suppose when you're definitely told that you're definitely going to do something, and all of a sudden there's an element of, this could actually not happen. Yeah. Sometimes that was probably, that potentially could have been a big factor to help us anyway as well, because nobody cared about Sheffield. Everybody had written us off. And I suppose, again, by being such big underdogs, it makes it better. Yeah. Going in as favourites, you're expected, normalised. Like I said, so to go in as such, and I'd never beat Wigan. I don't think I'd ever beat Wigan up to that game. For playing up to that Challenge Cup final. So, and they were back at Old Central Park then as well, when we play them. So they were the big formidable team, and to beat them in a Challenge Cup final, yeah, totally surreal.
Yeah. Good stuff, mate. And on the back of that, it was a debut for Great Britain, was it? And you scoring on debut and things. So
debut against Fiji, yeah.
Yeah. So how does that feel, considering them boxes weren't ticked as a kid? Not that you were particularly bothered, but it's probably a standard you could, again, you would never have dreamt of, isn't it? And
oh, definitely, yes. Like I said, the start of Super League season, I was on the bench, and again, you could say that luck was a big part of my progression in that career. Joe Dakitoga, the Fijian, was on the wing. He got injured very, very early in that game. I think after about 7 or 8 minutes, he got injured, which allowed me to then go on the pitch early on. And then, obviously, his injury kept him out. And because I played well in that game, all of a sudden, I was starting to get cemented as a winger and a little bit as a centre as well. So I was starting to develop myself a little bit more, so again, a lot of luck. If Joe hadn't been injured that game, because backs weren't, you don't get utilised. Yeah. I'd have probably got maybe 10 minutes at the end of the game because it was so close. And then the week after, I might not have been picked, or, you know what I mean? It's just one of them things. Joe's misfortune was my gain. And the season sort of like went really, really well, but there wasn't much. There was a few sniffs from the media about international rugby, but it wasn't a case of, I was 20 years old, never played any representative rugby, so it wasn't a case of I was expecting anything or pushing for anything. It was just, little bits of rumours that were happening. And I think I only got the call up because somebody actually pulled out. I think somebody pulled out of the tour, so then I replaced Sunday before the squads got announced.
Okay.
So I wasn't in the first select squad to go, and I think somebody pulled out, and I ended up getting a selection from that, getting pulled in. John Roper got selected before me. Both me and John Roper were young centres at the time, and he got selected in the squad before me. And then I think I'm not 100% sure who pulled out. Somebody had to pull out, so then that's when I got selected. And then it was just like, wow, this is a big thing.
Yeah.
Real big thing. I'm going to Papua New Guinea, Fiji and New Zealand because I've been to East Coast. I'm going on a 36-hour flight to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
Really. But because that season had been so good, first Super League season as club rugby, it was just a real outstanding way to end the season.
To cap it off.
To do international rugby. Like I said, I'd not done any rep rugby before. To get a chance, an opportunity, and I wasn't expected to play.
Yeah.
I wasn't expected to play first. To earn a cap. Playing the midweek games were an outstanding experience. Going to Papua New Guinea and playing up at Mount Hagen for my first game, international rugby. Absolutely outstanding. Outstanding experience, and one that I would have never have had. I would have never have had as an HGV mechanic. I never even thought about going to Papua New Guinea.
No, it's everything happens for a reason, I think, mate, and it just was meant to happen. It didn't matter how it happened.
It was quite strange, though, because I actually had a shocker in that first my first test.
Yeah.
Back then, it weren't classed as a first cap because I think now your first game's a first game, but you had to play for the lesser nations. You had to play 2 games to get a cap. So I wasn't necessarily getting a cap for that game, Fiji. You had to play against New Zealand or Australia, or 2 games against Fiji or Papua New Guinea. So my first game against Fiji, I was playing really well in the midweek tests, and I was scoring tries and playing really well. So getting the opportunity to be on the bench. Again, and it was great as well because the Fijian team had 3 of the Sheffield players, which were Joe Dakitoga, Malakai Yassa and Waziri Savataboa. So I was playing against 3 Fijians that I'd played club rugby with at Sheffield Eagles. And when I came on, the first thing that Joe Dakitoga did to me was run at me, and he ran over the top of me. So my stats for that game were somewhat like 1 missed tackle, no tackles, 1 try. So I'd only had a couple of carries as well. I'd not done much in that game. And I've got a photograph of me with Paul Broadbent and the 3 Fijians. My shirt's bright white. I've got it on the There's not one spot. I think I've got a tiny little bit of dirt here. I think that's Joe's footprint on the chest. Apart from that, there's no dirt on it. So as a first game, it was a shocker, really. I did score. Don't get me wrong, I did score, but I didn't do anything. I didn't really, my first involvement, I missed a tackle. I got absolutely stomped by Big Joe. I think that was his way of getting me back for then taking his position from the early games.
So, obviously we can see a bit there, mate, but was it initially for you that you kept the jerseys, the pictures, the programmes, or was it for maybe your mum and dad and that for the little sacrifices, or is it something you're really into?
I've just kept all my winners' shirts. I've kept my first Super League shirt from Challenge Cup, first Super League shirt at Sheffield Eagles.
Yeah.
The World Club Challengers, the grand finals, I've got 1 Dream Team shirt, and the rest I got rid of. I've kept programmes. I became a little bit infamous for selling stuff on eBay.
Right.
Because I sort of like started a bit of a trend. So nobody was selling. People keep shirts for years.
Yeah.
End of the craze, they've literally got boxes and boxes and boxes in the loft. And I get that. I get it. And I was just like, well, I don't want that. What's the point in keeping a shirt of, it's a Leeds Rhino shirt that I played in that season. I might have played in 3 or 4 shirts that year. A little bit of, but let somebody else have it.
That's where you're going to put your Christmas tree, mate, if that's in your loft.
I'm just like, you know what? I'll test this market here. I'll look at selling them on eBay. I ended up getting some good money, and then it was like all of a sudden there's a bit of a market here.
Yeah.
So I started just, World Cup Challenge shirts. I'd get some certain signed and get certain things done, and I'd make some good money. And I thought, well, I need to keep some, so I'll keep some of the shirts, my testimonial shirt, and the rest of it, right? I'll give some to charity. I'll sell some, and I'll donate other things as well. There's only 1 shirt that I regret getting rid of, and that's an Adrian Morley shirt. Because me and Adrian Morley were both went on that tour to Papua New Guinea, Fiji, New Zealand, and we toured a lot with room together. And I think it was a good few years later, we ended up swapping shirts, and we both signed each other's shirts, and it was quite a nice moment. And it was just I was in a period where I was renovating an house. Money were going out of her, and it was just like, just get rid of all this shit, just get rid of everything. I can't be asked with anything. I don't really need it. And now, looking back, it's one of them moments where, that's 1 shirt that I wish I'd have kept. It's the only one that I wish I'd have kept, because me and Moz grew up, first international game we were together. We both were on the bench for the first test against New Zealand. We both got blamed for that loss. So we've both got something in common. We roomed together for that tour, and it's probably one of the only things that I potentially regret getting rid of now.
Well, you'll find it, me.
I'm gonna say somebody's got it, because I know somebody asked me about it about it might have been about 10 years ago. It came up. I think somebody messaged me on it. I don't know, and just to get clarification that it was his shirt, but it was just like, then it disappeared. Then it just drifted away. So
I'll happily help you find that, mate. Hey, I will, mate. I'll put it out there.
Which year it was from, though? I think it was very early 2000s. Me and Moz have actually got a picture together from. I think it was after the New Zealand. It might have been after the New Zealand Test Series win. That we played, so it might have been the year that we drew the Test Series against New Zealand, but we took the win because the last game it was a winner takes all, and we won it. I think it might have been that year. So
maybe we can only ask, can't we?
That's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, we can only ask.
He'll be demanding some big bucks though, but there is no chance. I don't love it that much.
Yeah.
I'm still a tight Yorkshireman.
You've got the memory still, yeah. So how did signing for Leeds come about, and was anyone else interested, Keith?
Yes. I've been at Sheffield a while. Like I said, Sheffield were Sheffield. They were great for me. Really good because they allowed me to develop. Like I said, if I'd have gone to Leeds as a kid, I don't know if I'd made it, because they could afford to just say, you're not good enough. We can afford to bring somebody else in. So I owe a lot for Sheffield being that team that needed to take a punt on some kids, and they took a punt on a lot of kids. But as a career, I was a Great Britain international. I'd won the Challenge Cup. We didn't push on from that Challenge Cup win. So it was like, right, I need to make a decision now. And I asked for a transfer. I said there were some things that had been said in the press, a little bit of criticism that I'd said or potentially said. So I remember we were playing Leeds away that game, and John Keir had said something derogatory, or I might have said that I needed to get out of the club or something like that. And he said for the team meeting before the game, he said, just give Keith the ball. But it was just like a little bit of brazen, basically calling me a dickhead for doing what I did. And I ended up having an outstanding game. I absolutely ripped him to shreds. It was just one of them games where I played absolutely superb. And I were on transfer list, and I'd asked to move because I needed to progress my career. Things were getting stale, and I knew that I just didn't want to carry on floating along, because I played international rugby. I'd won Challenge Cup. I'd had a real good career with Sheffield. But again, like I said, because that Challenge Cup win didn't progress us, after you've won a Challenge Cup final, if you can't then push on from there, it's like, right, I need to make a decision here. So I put in a transfer request early on in the year. Nothing came about. There was a lot of talking with Leeds, talking with Wigan. Andy Goodway was the Wigan coach. So we're talking with them a little bit at the time. Wigan then signed somebody called Steve Renouf, so they got rid of me. They forgot about me. So I was still talking with Gary, and it ended up going on for the full year. And it ended up getting to the last game of the season. And I signed on the Friday afternoon and played Friday evening of the last game of the season of 1999. Yeah. So it was a long drawn out affair.
Yeah.
Long drawn out affair, because Sheffield were in two. Do we get rid of? We don't want to sell him. We do want to sell him. We don't want to sell him. Right. And then it got to a stage where they had to sell me because Sheffield were losing money, and I think the owner, Paul Thompson, at the time was losing money, and they needed to reap some of that back. And the only way they were going to reap some money back was through selling me.
Yeah.
So it took a full season for me to then sign on that 99. Literally went for lunch, met Graham Murray for the first time, had a conversation with them, and then they said, right, you're playing tonight. Right, all right. I'd never met the players, so that was the first time I'd met the players when we were in international camp. So turns up Friday night to play the game against London Broncos at Edinburgh. Chev Walker was proper pissed off with me because he was I think he was 16 years old at the time, and he played he played 4 games, and he was getting a 5-game bonus, and that he were playing that night. So he got a call Friday afternoon saying, Chev, you're not playing. We've signed Keith Senior. So you can imagine as a kid, I think it must have been something like $5,000. We're not talking a small amount of money for a 16-year-old kid at the time. So it was a decent 5-game bonus for him to then all of a sudden get told, you're not getting it. So we were like, what? So I think it despised me for the first few games of that season.
So there was no what's the word, like transfer deadlines out. It was a free play all year.
I think so. Yeah, so like I say, I signed the last game of
the season.
season.
I read that, but I just found it bizarre. So I didn't want to say it to you and then look them up because it weren't right.
You don't look too much into transfers when you're playing. You just
it's just a bizarre move, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just like, I think it was just a case of an opportunity arose, and I think you could just do it. It weren't as stringent back then. So transfer deadlines, they're trying to hype them up, aren't they? And now
mate.
Making it exciting like football.
So does that give you a bit of an head start before the pre-season, does it? Because you're already there kind of thing, do you think?
Yes and no. We beat London that game. So it wasn't a convincing win. I think it wasn't a massive score. Leeds had won the Challenge Cup that year. Graham Murray was the coach, and Graham Murray were leaving at the end of the year. So Leeds were on a bit of, after winning the Challenge Cup, they were on a bit of a decline.
Yeah.
Then they were in the playoffs that year. So we played London last game of the season. Then we went to St Helens away. We got pumped. And then we had Cass at home in the playoffs, and they beat us.
Right.
So that was that year done. And it was a little bit of, the fans have seen me for 3 games. I potentially might have been a signing that might have given them a bit of hope, but I didn't. So he's shit. So I'm starting. It was good to, because maybe Leeds weren't in the best of places at that time. It might not have been right, but these things happen.
Yeah.
But it helped me along the way, because then when Dean Lance came in as coach, I wasn't then first choice centre. I was Paul Bell's winger. So Paul Bell was left centre, I was left wing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even the starting choice centre for this new coach that had come in. And it was just a nightmare for me. Every time, nothing seemed to work. Dean Lance as a coach was some of his ideas were quite strange, and as a coach and as a club connection, it didn't quite work. He ended up leaving quite early on in his contract, but the fans had already made a judgment of me from the 3 games before the season started. So I wasn't a fan's favourite, and it was quite daunting at times, and it probably made me more thick-skinned. I'd gone from a club like Sheffield that never booed you. In 7 years there, we probably got booed maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
That full career, to all of a sudden going to Leeds and getting booed all the time.
Right.
Quite daunting because of what had happened in that 99 season, and probably people thinking, you know what, he's pretty shit, is this guy? He's out of his depths. Huge club of Leeds. I'm going from Sheffield, and he's out of his depth. He's not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And judgments had been made. So I wasn't a fan's favourite. So my name would get called out on team sheet and I'd get booed. Normalised me, and it just made me a little bit thick-skinned. And it made me change, that's the controllable that I can't control. And the fans pay the wages. It's nice to get cheered, and it's nice, and it matters. But I need to earn the respect of the players and the coach and the people around me. That's my main priority. Yeah. I can't control what the fans do. So if they boo me, they boo me. It's part and parcel of the game. So it made me a little bit thick-skinned in that aspect. And then I ended up scoring 4 tries against Halifax. And then all of a sudden, the fans then started cheering me a little bit more, and then Leeds started playing a little bit better. I started finding my feet a little bit more.
Yeah.
Then started playing a lot better. And it just took me a little bit longer to settle in than, because it was a big club, it was a total different change of atmosphere. A new coach had come in. The club was on a little bit... Leeds were always the underachievers that, they'd always spend big money, but they'd always underachieve. They won the Challenge Cup in that 99 season, and then they didn't really do anything else again until 2004 when they won the grand final. But they were always the underachievers. They were always in the shadow of Wigan.
Yeah.
Even though they spent a lot of money. They
Yeah.
spent a lot of money, and I think that was the expectation. The expectation of the club is that they demand success. And I was potentially one of them people that was signed to bring them success.
Bring that, yeah.
But I weren't going to bring them success. You know,
Well, not on your own. You said that before, didn't you? Yeah.
And I was still finding my feet as well. You know, going into a new club, it did take me time. It took me time to adapt to the pressures of it week in, week out, and the fans and what's expected of you. Like I say, international rugby is at the end of the year. That's 3 games. Sheffield, we didn't have expectations and demands put on us, whereas at Leeds, it was, you have got to win, you have got to win, you have got to win. And it was like, whoa. And it did take me time. I can put my hand up and say, you know what, it took me time to settle in, to adapt to a little bit of the environment. But then once it did start changing a little bit, then it just started getting better, taking them steps forward, starting to grow a little bit more and getting some more of that confidence back in myself as well. Because you sometimes do question yourself and it's like, am I good enough for this?
Yeah.
The first time I made my debut for Great Britain, you know, against New Zealand, I came away from that test series, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not an international player. I'm not, you know, I've played international, but I'm not an international player. If I want to be an international player, I've got to be better. I've got to do a lot of extras. I've got to do a lot of things, you know. So, and then all of a sudden, it was like, am I good enough to be a Leeds player? So again, there were a little bit of doubt in there, but you know, thankfully, the support, the team, you know, the team around was exceptional, and started to find his feet.
When did it ever start to feel that you were on the brink of doing what you've done, if that makes sense? So when you've signed, you've probably not felt that, have you? You've understood they're a big club. You've understood that maybe they were in a little bit of transition after that 99 Challenge Cup final. But
yeah.
Was there, at what point did you think that this is a special side, this? And did you think you could stay together and go on and do what you've done?
Yeah, we got to that Challenge Cup final that year 2000, and we got there 2003. Got there 2005. So we always were there or thereabouts, but we couldn't get them wins. In them big games. So we were still a good team. Don't get me wrong, we were still a good team. Then Darryl Powell came in as coach. Probably too early for him at that time, but then he started implementing a lot of good things into the team. Because he'd gone straight from playing, then all of a sudden he had to come in as a coach because Dean Lance had gone, and then Darryl Powell got brought in. So it was too early in his coaching career, but his philosophy and his methods were really good for us at that time. And then Tony Smith came in and then sort of like
changed again,
elevated it all. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was simplistic things. Tony Smith doesn't reinvent the wheel when he, as a coach. Yeah. He just worked on the core elements of the game, and you hammered him and you hammered him and you hammered him, and then you just started developing a lot of it and believing in each other a lot better, you know. So he didn't reinvent the wheel. He was just meticulous in everything that he did. Played his mind games, don't get me wrong, which a lot of coaches do, but he just brought in simple basics, core elements of the game, which some people just take for granted a bit.
Yeah, and overlook, mate, don't they? Look for the spectacular instead of the basic, when basics and defence will win you games 9 times out of 10, won't they?
No, rugby's a simple game. Rugby union's a very, very complex game. Rugby's so simple in terms of, you know where people are going to defend, or you can try and manipulate them a little bit where you get to a middle of the field, you're always going to get a 5-5 split or a 6-4 split, without doubt. You know, that's a given. So you know that you can always create an overlap. So to create an overlap, you need the finer details around from the dummy half, the little core skills to do that, because you can always create an overlap. It's making sure that you've got them finer details in them areas to be able to then implement it to get what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And when did you feel you were called in to be part of the group that had set culture and standards? With you being an international player pretty young, was it put on you younger or?
Good question, that.
Sorry, mate.
No, it's right. It's right to say, because I've reflected on my career a lot since retiring, and you do, because of the field of work that I'm in now. We're talking a lot about mental health, and we talk about positive influences and people on your life. And in that Leeds team, there were a lot of players that grew up together.
Yeah.
Talk about Ryan Bailey, Chev Walker, Mark Calderwood, Danny Maguire, Rob Burrow, Kev Sinfield, Jamie Jones-Buchanan. There were a lot of players, Nick Scruton, a lot of players that came through the academy and were involved in that team in the early 2000s onward and stayed together for quite a long time. So there wasn't really a stature type thing. You know, Barry McDermott were in there as well, and Kevin from a very young age was always going to be a born leader. But I remember Kevin saying to me, the only difference as him as a captain and everybody else in the team is the fact that he leads the team out, because everybody else always had that input. There wasn't, you know, you always tend to have a senior group or a leadership group, and there's a little bit of segregation there, where we were all quite open and confident to be able to be constructive, to be critical, to have a go at each other, to say what's good, to say what's bad, to say what's working, to say what's not. And we had that as a team in a way, you know what I mean? So yes, we had internationals, but there wasn't a status thing or I'm an international.
No hierarchy.
A little bit more authority. I'm going to do what you do, and you're going to come up to me as well. So the younger kids were having a little bit more of an input as well, rather than just having that one person that was that type of leader element. We all were, in a way. Like I said, then reflecting on the positive influences, just the little things like me, Kevin, Jamie Jones-Buchanan, we used to do a little bit of extra training together. And you go away and you look at it in hindsight, well, that's a positive influence, because we've all pulled each other into certain aspects to improve each other's games.
Yeah,
that was how we worked a little bit. Come on, let's go do this. Yeah. At the time, it's not, you don't think of it as anything else, but then you come away from it and you think, you know what, that's positive influences. That's people trying to inspire each other and trying to progress each other. They're trying to progress themselves as well, but we're trying to do it collaboratively.
Yeah. And without knowing it, mate, probably people are looking up and going, well, if Keith, JJB and Kev are doing that at the level they're at, that's exactly what them young lads coming through should be doing.
Yeah.
And you're doing that without knowing, aren't you?
You hear things about James Roby now at St Helens. He's still doing things and he's still trying to inspire people. And he's doing, I think he's supposed to do, I don't know if this is right, but I heard he's supposed to do a little bit of conditioning before the last session or something like that. And somebody questioned him. I don't know if I'm right, it might be wrong, but you know how you hear rumours in the place. And one of the young kids said to him, "You fit as a fiddle, why are you doing that?" And he turned around and he said something like, "I know what works for me." And that's what he does, and that's what he needed to do. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I thought, you know what? It's cracking, is that?
Yeah.
He's been in the game a long time. He's doing what he needs to do to make sure that he
stays there and maintains. Yeah,
that's probably the reason why he's fit.
Why he's there?
He's doing little bits of extras.
Yeah. So when I didn't send you this question; it's just come to me head. But you know, when the imports come in, and Leeds have been very smart with their imports, haven't they? With your Brent Webbs and your Lawatitis and your Willie Poachins, your Carly Luai.
Back end, they had a bit of with Brett Mullins and Bradley Clyde, and we had a bit.
Right, well, that's a bit before me, probably, But the ones that I can remember in that team you were involved in that you've conquered and really set a benchmark.
Yeah.
Are they good at buying in? do they bring a little bit with them, or how do you get not put them in line, but how do you introduce them to the Leeds culture?
We always talk about cultures, don't we? It's a strange concept, isn't it? But it's just a lot of the times it's just about being a good person, isn't it? That's all.
Fundamentally, yeah.
That's all a good culture is. You know, if you're respectful for each other, you're polite for each other, you clean up. Because people talk about the all black way of cleaning the changing rooms. That's been done for millions and millions of centuries.
Yeah, just social media wasn't about, was it? And
because they're banging a drum about it, all of a sudden it's a revolutionary thing that if you clean your changing room, you're going to be a good team. No, it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah,
you know, it's a respectful type of thing. You leave things how you know. It's
them. Yeah.
About being a good person, and I think if you find them good people, then they're naturally going to fit in. And that's, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you bring people in and they've got demons, they've got issues, they're not quite right, there's not quite a fit, and it happens. Yeah. And then sometimes you look for them good people. For one, it's easier for the coach, because I know as a coach, and you get it more as soon as you retire and then you go into coaching, you get that being an arsehole for 5 minutes can ruin a session. It can totally ruin a session. And that's, sometimes it's just about being a good person. And you have guidelines, you have structures, you have things in that are implemented. But if you're a good person, then you're not going to go far wrong in my eyes.
Yeah.
And Webby, absolutely outstanding bloke. Our TT, you bring in him. He's a born again Christian. He's got some high moral values. He's got some high. You've got to live by your values. And if you've got high values, you're going to be a good person. And he was a great person to have around. Jamie Jones Buchanan can't speak highly enough. Jason Robinson can't speak highly enough about Viaga Twiggamara. How he changed his life because he's a good person. And by bringing them good people into that environment, into the environment that you've got, you just complement each other. Yeah. But it also helps that our TT could offload a ball for fun. Brent Webb brought a new dimension to the fullback. Yeah. He brought a new dimension of how fullbacks played, I believe. We put in basically another half-back on the field. Paul Wellens type was a grafter, a worker, a defender, doing all the little things. Then Sam Tompkins goes from a half-back to full-back, and it's like all of a sudden the game's been revolutionised by having ball players there. And I'm a big believer that Webby was one of the original players that came into the game that was that type of player, and he complemented Leeds in that respect. Complemented us.
So when you get into them big moments, mate, and you've said you've lost a few before the special time come, what's the best way of keeping people on track to get them to still buy in and know that the loss will turn into a win? Did you notice anything little even that might have changed for you other than mentality to become from just going to the big dance to winning in the big dance?
A lot of us had grown up together at that time, so there was always that belief that we were a good team. There was just that sort of like monkey on your back, with the Challenge Cup losses and not winning grand finals. They got to the 98 grand final and they lost. 2000 Challenge Cup final lost. 2003 Challenge Cup final lost. So there was always that monkey on the back, but we were always a good team. And then the 2004 grand final, all of a sudden, I don't know if it changed the mentality of a little bit, we are a good team, we can win these big games. Again, sometimes you just can't put your finger on things. If you knew, we'd all be...
You do it every week,
We'd all be brilliant. But we were just a good bunch of lads that enjoyed being around each other, enjoyed being together, and we respected each other. When we had a bad egg, we weaned them out. And that took time. And that takes time.
Were you left to do that yourselves, Keith? Yeah.
Sometimes it takes, grab people by the scruff of the neck, come on, need to switch on because we are a team. And then sometimes it's the coaches that recognise, sometimes they can't work together, sometimes there's personality clashes, it happens. I know now as a coach, sometimes you have personality clashes, it happens. Sometimes things don't work out, but like I say, it's all about having good people around the place. And like I say, if you've got high moral values and you're potentially a good person, then when it comes to that, I think you've already gone high. You've gone a long way to getting what you need. Then it's just about putting a few guidelines in place, which are never hard to do because you know that they're going to get done.
Yeah. So how's a grand final weekend? How do you feel about Old Trafford as a stadium? Because it's been pretty kind to you boys, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it's definitely up there.
Yeah,
so close. You get shivers thinking about it now. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And again, the best moments for me were the warm up, going out and just taking in the atmosphere. And enjoying it, because when you're in the game, you can enjoy a little bit of it, but you've still got to have that focus. So just enjoying the warm up and looking into the crowd and listening to the noise, because it's on top of you. It is really on top of you. And I think that's some of the rugby stadiums now, they tend to be a little bit more far away, lose a little bit of that atmosphere. But when Old Trafford's full, it's absolutely outstanding. Absolutely
different beast.
Place. Yeah. And I suppose because it is the mecca of football, it's not as much now as what it used to be.
Yeah.
Back when we were playing, they were an outstanding team and winning everything still.
Yeah, we're hard to follow at the minute, mate.
Yeah, Manchester United was a big club. They've lost a little bit of status, but when we were there,
we were the side, weren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, huge. I take it you're a Man United fan then, by
I am, mate. Yeah, it's been hard. It's been hard. So you mentioned it before. You got your testimonial jersey, mate. So something that people probably don't appreciate is a lot of hard work goes into your testimonial, isn't there? So what's involved in that?
I was very lucky.
Right.
I'm just going to shoot you down a little bit now. I only had a 4-month testimonial. I got mine granted. Gary Everington asked for mine. So by the time I'd come back off tour, then I'd been told that I was having a 4-month testimonial, because at that period, Franny Cummins were one of the first ones, and Barry McDermott. Then there were testimonial, year after year after year. And then when it was coming close to mine, I think there was someone like Danny Maggs and Rob Burrow and loads of people all around about the same time. So I got mine pulled forward a year or two. Yeah. And I had a 4-month one. So literally when I came back, Gary had done a lot of the groundwork in the fact of, right, you've got a testimonial. This is your testimonial jersey. Get your committee together. I advised these, so then I got my committee together, and then it was like, right, you've got 4 months. So I didn't have a case of Barry McDermott absolutely fleeced it. Then literally every week, he would have gone to somebody's house just to get £5 and that committed to his testimonial events.
Yeah, 15 quid petrol, but would have went for the £5.
Yeah. So I just focused on game and then one big event a month. So,
right. Was it something you enjoyed though, mate?
Oh, I loved it, yeah. Really good. I had a great committee. Tim Adams was the head of my committee, who was my chairman at Sheffield. He was my chairman at Sheffield, and he was a loiner. He's a big Leeds Rhinos fan, and he was also an accountant. So that helps anyway. Now he's my boss at RLcares, chairman of the RLcares and part of the benevolent fund as well. So
it's mad how that works out, mate, innit? It's
yeah. So he's been a big part of my life for a long time, and you were outstanding for me, testimonial committee. And Sean at Leeds, superb. That's what they do week in, week out, and they know what they're doing when it comes to events. The ground staff, they're getting the game, working the match a day for free. All the fans, and they have a band at Leeds Rhinos, and getting them to come. Some of you've got that gratitude of people coming out of the way to do things. They weren't getting paid, a lot of them people. And then obviously Huddersfield, getting them involved in my hometown team. But Paul really, with his testimonial year as well, so it was good to help him out a little bit as well.
Right. No booze, they ought, mate.
Yeah, one of the best events we did was a full Monty. So with a Sheffield theme, we were going to actually do it at the place where they filmed the full Monty.
That'd have been class, that, wouldn't it?
Because of getting numbers in there, we ended up doing it at the Queen's Hotel. So there were me, Wilt Burgess, Lee Smith, Ben Kate, and Ian Kirk. Us five were doing the full Monty. So thank you for them for doing it. But it was at the Queen's Hotel, 400 women and a team of it was just like, wow. it was another level.
I can imagine.
I went full mashings. I totally stripped off, but the lights were supposed to dim and I was supposed to do it. They ended up messing it up totally. So I dropped my hat and all sorts. And then when we went back into the back, Nicola Booth was one of the cheerleaders. She was one of the dance. I think she even still works there now. The dance coordinator for the cheerleaders. She gave us a dance routine and she helped organise it with Amy Dowes. They were setting up an events company at the time, so they organised it all and they did his dance routine. So after we'd done the full Monty, they came back in and said, "Oh, go back outside in your underpants and get people on the dance floor." Oh yeah, of course we'll. We ended up going onto this dance floor and it was just sheer carnage. There were hands coming out everywhere. Underpants and all sorts. It was just like, what is going on here? We were having to flee back into changing rooms to get away.
Class.
Yeah, so it was a bit of an eye opener. I've never been so intimidated in my whole life. It was one of the most nervous things I've ever done.
It's class though, isn't it? It's funny.
I did pick up a tip about elastic bands and do work.
Right, mate. So you touched again before on the Super League Dream Team tops. What did they mean to you? And you did win a Players Player of the Year award as well, which we've bypassed because I've chewed your ear off. But are them personal accolades a nice thing for you? I know just off speaking to you now, I can guarantee you your collective are more important to you. I know that, but it still must be nice to get that personal recognition as well. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it gives you something to aim for. Once again, you get that dream team. It sort of like elevates your status a little bit and gets you out there. But to continuously do it, I got named in the World 13 on 3 times as well. And to get that for everybody in the game of rugby league was a huge accolade to get. To get that recognition. From people from Australia. At a time, Great Britain and that were a little bit disregarded by the Australians because we couldn't win Test series. We couldn't win a Test series. We'd just win the one-off game. So they didn't have a huge amount of respect. And there weren't many English players that went over. Gaz Ellis, Adrian Morley, the odd few were just going over. It's not like now where there's a good sprinkling of English players out there. They didn't really buy into a lot of us as a competition. So to get that recognition from, to get into them teams was really good. And players of year, player of the year. Like I said, my focus was to get respect from my fellow players and my coaches. To get selected as player of the year by the coach is, it's nice. It's good. It's good. Really good.
Stuff, mate. So the World Club Challenge, which you touched on, which is, again, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think the Aussies sort of mistreat that a little bit, don't they? And it's something I feel we buy into big over here, and we do what we can to showcase it. But how's that for an experience, and is it a concept you enjoy and agree with?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's one of them, innit? Ideally, it needs to be done after the grand finals, technically, but then you don't enjoy the grand finals because doing it the season the year after, players have moved on, so it's not the same teams.
Yeah.
And, like sometimes the Australians didn't take it as seriously by leaving people behind, but the players that come over, they want to win. There's still a lot of pride in playing in that World Cup challenge, no matter who plays. So, yeah, like you said, to get the Australians to come over and to turn them over is good.
Enjoyable. Yeah, I can imagine, mate.
Yeah, really enjoyable. And it's always good to test yourself against the top players in the world because, the Australians and New Zealand's, the Tongans have grown and the Samoans have grown. The Pacific Island teams have really matured.
Yeah.
The Southern Pacific teams is the pinnacle of the game, and they're the top players around at the moment with us as well. So to play against the top players, that's what you want to do, and you want to play against the best players. You want to challenge yourself against the top players. So to do that is great. It's really good.
Yeah, and a little quick on the Water of Roses, mate, because you were lucky to play in that one. Yeah, and the concept again, is it something you liked and you'd like to see back? And could it be used as other than, like you said, the lads that go to Australia, could it be used as a selection process, do you think, internationally? Or
we loved it. We loved it. Yeah. It was enjoyable. But it were crammed into a midweek game as well as playing your Super League games.
The round on the weekend.
You played Yorkshire Lancashire Wednesday, then you play on a Friday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
And we would all play every game. You'd still love it and you still enjoy it, and it's great representing your county. And it's fitting it in. I believe you could get it back to a big status, but you've got to give it a window.
Standalone weekend, yeah.
You've got to give it that standalone weekend, and you've got to develop it, and you've not just got to say, "Oh, it's not worked this year, so we'll just can it." It's not going to take off for a good few years. It needs to have a good 5 to 10 years to develop. But then, financially, playing less games in Super League means there's less money for the clubs. So as soon as we start talking about money, all of a sudden, people's what is important to them starts changing.
Yeah.
It's like Easter weekend, playing Friday, playing Sunday, or playing Friday or Thursday, Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, whatever. Right, okay, we'll take out that game, but you've got to take a £5,000 to £10,000 pay cut. What would you rather do? I'm playing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I preferred playing than training anyway. Yeah. Easter weekend, training's going to be very, very light. Games, so I'd rather, it didn't matter to me how many games you played. We talk about welfare, and I get injuries. If you're not fit, don't play. If you are fit, play. Your body is a super tool. It will adapt to anything that you put it through. It just needs that time to adapt. As a younger kid, I could play Easter weekends. I did not mind Easter weekends. It did not put me off wanting to play. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, it was tough.
Yeah.
But the game's bloody tough. And I enjoyed that element of it. As you get a bit older, yes, it does get harder. You take a little bit longer to recover. The joints aren't as good. And but that's sport. It happens no matter what.
Yeah, and you get smarter as you get older with the recovery, don't you? So was there ever any opportunities or chances from either club to leave Leeds before you'd agreed to have? Because obviously Crusaders dropped out when you'd agreed that move, and you ended up calling it a day.
All that Crusaders thing would have a very, very strange period for me. So I'll talk about rugby union. I was speaking to Phil Larder when he went to rugby union. So he was Sheffield coach, obviously international coach as well. Then he went to rugby union. So I was having a few conversations with him, But that never really materialised again. I think that a lot of that were down to money.
Yeah.
And then I think we played in a World Nines, early 2000s, or World Nines it would have been, or Sevens in Australia. And I ended up becoming joint top try scorer in that competition. And then it created a little bit of buzz that time. So again, a few Australia clubs started sniffing about a little bit, but then there was a big transfer fee because I was contracted for 2-3 years at Leeds, and then as soon as contract fee, transfer fees were spoken about, it was like
squashed.
Yeah, because even now you still don't get you don't get transfer fees. Going back to your Paul Newell's, your Martin Fires, your Harry Hanley's. When were the next big one from then in rugby league?
Yeah.
Big transfer fees still, even now, are not something that happens.
It's like first refusal. They try and throw in now, don't they? So if anything was to happen, they get first option to re-sign.
Yeah. So the negotiations, there were little bits of talks, little bits of sniffs, but it's not something that I regret. It would have been nice, but you just don't know how your life would have panned out. If I'd have had a crap career, then I wish I did that. But rugby's given me so much. The career that I've had, absolutely outstanding. And then when it came to the Crusaders thing, I was 35 years old, and Brian Mack had come in head coach that year, 2011. Yeah. He came up to me and he sort of like said, I had a conversation with him, and he said to me, "You're getting old now, you're 35 and you're going to break at some point. So you need to prove yourself for next year if you want a contract." And it was like, fine, I've no qualms about that. I'll prove myself because I was still playing at the top end of my game. I was still playing very, very well. I knew that I could still deliver. So I never had any issue with that as a threat, so to speak. But then literally in May, I ruptured my ACL. My Leeds career were over since then. So as soon as that happened, I couldn't play and I couldn't prove myself. So it was like, what Brian Mack said was true.
Thanks, Brian.
But then I still wanted to play. I was still going to play. Had it in my head that I was still going to play. So then Crusaders came in. Yestin Harris were coach there, and they offered me an outstanding contract.
Yeah.
Outstanding contract. And, I signed it. But then a week later, the team folded, went tits up. He'd been promised a load of things from people behind the scenes, and they didn't deliver. It wasn't his fault. He'd got a lot of false promises from other people. It didn't make much difference to me. For the people that were at the Crusaders club at the time, they lost thousands, I think, believe through pensions, etc., etc.
Yeah, everything.
So I was pissed off at the time because I found out through Sky Sports. I just sat there and it just said Crusader, and it was like, what?
Yeah, no courtesy call or nothing. Yeah.
What's going on here? But I'd got a hospital infection. I got MRSA in hospital from the ACL injury. So then I had to have 12 operations in 10 months. And after the last operation, the surgeon basically said, you're done. I don't know what's wrong with your knee. You won't play professional rugby again. So it was sort of like taken out of my hands. So I never really retired. I just drifted away because I was always going to come back. But then it had been so long since I'd played that it was just like, well, right, I've done. That's it. Now what do I do? That was it. It was just like, all right, I've done now. So from that last meeting with the surgeon, getting that confirmation, because I'd always had that hope, because it'll be all right, you'll be sorted. So as soon as it had been that long, the ACL graft had healed and everything else, but I couldn't bend my knee, but they couldn't understand why, so I couldn't bend my knee past a certain degree. And it still gives me a load of shit and jip now, but up until that point, I was always going to play. And then that last meeting with the surgeon, it was just like, whoa, right, world's falling apart.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so, to actually have somebody tell you, you are now finished as a professional rugby league player, you will never play the game again. It's quite a tough pill to swallow when that's all you've known and all you've done.
Yeah. No, I imagine, mate.
I still knew that I could do it. That was the thing.
Yeah.
I'd got it all in my. It's not my time. It's not my time to retire. I've still got too much to do. I've still got too much to offer. I've still got targets that I want to meet, that I want to do. Even though I'd still done so much, I still had so much more that I wanted to do. And this isn't my time, so I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept it.
Right. So how did you? Was it the foundation work? Was it when you managed to come back to Sheffield coaching? What made you happiest? And we'll touch on the rugby league care stuff, because what you do is great, isn't it? It's like you said, the mental health stuff, but it's also encouraging people, players, to have something to fall back on and to transition into, isn't it?
Yeah, back when I hate the term back in my day.
Yeah.
Players go, back in my day, you wouldn't have got away with that. And you find yourself saying, no, stop saying that. I hate that. Things develop and change, but when it was, there were no player welfare when I was playing, because it weren't needed, because everybody were part-time.
Yeah.
When, before Super League started, everybody had jobs. They had second careers. They had other purposes. They had the thing. But then when Super League came in, it was like all of a sudden, everybody that's your job. And your main focus is rugby. And that was my main focus. And that was my identity as a professional rugby league player. And I put everything into it. Nothing else mattered. No more. I wasn't one of them. Kevin was really switched on. JP, very switched on. Matt Diskin, very switched on. Through their careers, they started developing educations and doing that, where I was like, I'll do it next year. I'll do it. I've got a 3-year contract. I'll do it next year. Kept putting it off. But we didn't need rugby league cares at that time, because people had careers and it was, mental health wasn't a big thing, but also transition, because people went from jobs because they still had jobs. So when they left rugby, they still had a job. And then all of a sudden we're getting these young kids out of school that have not got qualifications, to then having to finish the career with still no education and then basically start again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of transferable skills, but you're still starting again at 30, 35 years old when everybody else's careers are taking off. So a lot of, what happened with Terry Newton, God rest his soul, absolutely outstanding bloke. And that's one of it's one of the changes that sometimes you need a horrific incident to bring change.
Yeah, to kickstart something good.
That was a horrific incident that kickstarted a big change in welfare, in well-being, and that then implemented, something needs to be done. That had been talks about, with the benevolent fund was formed, and then RLcares was formed. And then it's just been developed to find out what the purpose is what's needed for players. And obviously education's a big part of it. We talk about identity. Identity is just having that identity as a rugby player is huge in any sport. A lot of sports people identify themselves as a rugby player, and you can be quite selfish and self-centered, and everything revolves around you. And it did with me. Some of my past relationships, I were horrible on match days because it was all about me and my rugby career. You don't matter. This is, so I'm very, very selfish. And I will keep seeing you the rugby player. Never keep seeing you the father or the husband or the whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. No, actually, yeah.
And even now, I keep seeing you the head rugby player. And that was my identity. I never saw myself as anything else. But also rugby gave me self-belief. Gave me that self-belief because I was good at it. And I grew in confidence with it. And when I didn't have it, all of a sudden I went back to being that 15-year-old kid again. Because I'm 35 years old now with no career future. I've no prospects, I've nothing to look forward to. I've still got a family to feed, I've still got kids, I've still got things that I need to do. I can't retire. Don't get me wrong, financially I was comfortable, but I didn't have any other purpose.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're searching that purpose outside of the family. Yeah.
I couldn't go back to education. I couldn't do it when I was in education. So how can I go back to education? So I went back to being that kid of 15-year-old of like, I can't do this. I can't do that because it's not me. And it took me a long time to then be able to develop myself and grow. How I grew as a rugby player is now how I'm growing as a person. You know, it's took me a long time to learn that about myself. You know, build that little bit of self-confidence. I've still got the acceptance that I'm never going to be an astronaut. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be this. I'm not going to be that. But I can be something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can set my mind to something, and I've started doing qualifications, started doing certain aspects of things, getting into mental health and psychology. Psychology is a total mind fuck, but when you start actually thinking about it, and I've spoke a lot about values and, you know, well-being. So your life's all about aligning it to your values. So it's very subjective. What's important to you is how you align your life. You know, what's important to me won't be important to you. You know, I've got a dog that means the world to me. You might hate dogs, so that's not going to be part of your values.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So aligning your life to your values is a big part of well-being, you know, and having that purpose away from rugby. And all the research now is that we were rugby, it's all about rugby, extras rugby, life's rugby, everything's rugby. Now it's rugby's there, but have that separate thing. Have another interest, because that sometimes is going to go shit deep.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to mess up or something's going to happen, you're going to have a bad game. You've got to have something then to focus on as well, because it's not all about that. And, you know, the research now is that having two purposes, having a hobby, having another career away from rugby is more beneficial than not. You know, so having that other career and that other focus to target on is now beneficial for your rugby career. You know, so, you know, it's been really interesting understanding all that, but also actually having insight into myself, you know, and looking at how I've grew up, how things have shaped me, how things have made me the person that I am. You know, I'm a closed book, mate. You might not think it.
Yeah.
I'm a closed book when it comes to emotions, feelings, talking about all that. I'm mentally tough, but I'm emotionally weak.
Okay.
Adversity and challenges I run away from. I can't deal with anything. And that's what I've always done. Yeah. As soon as there's something that will emotionally break me down, I shut it out. I run away from it and I block it out. And I've understood that about myself, you know, so I've had to develop myself and sometimes face up to these, actually talk through certain elements of going through emotions and dealing with these emotions. So, you know, I've had to do, since retiring, I've done a lot of insightful looking into myself. And
self-reflection,
understood myself a little bit more. You know, I'm still a bellend at times, but I know that.
We all are, mate. We all are. Aren't we? We can all paint ourselves to be this perfect shape, and we're not.
Yeah.
We all have our flaws, Keith, definitely.
I didn't have growth. I didn't have any growth in any aspect of my life apart from rugby.
Right.
With rugby, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to grow that.
Yeah.
The rest of my life, it didn't really matter. We're quite insignificant. Even though I've got a daughter that I love to bits, you know, I spent a big part of my life away from her because my priorities were rugby. Yeah. You know, rather than sometimes being that father figure or that family man. And, you know, that's something that I've learned about my dad as well. You know, my dad, that was society at the time. His job was to provide for his family. But I probably needed a father figure. I needed someone to pull me into line, give me a kick up the backside and to sort me out, I probably needed a father figure. I didn't need, you know what I mean? You know, so understanding, learning them little things about myself and why I'm quite a cold person to other people, my own company. You know, I like to keep myself to myself and just keep away from a lot of things. As when you're asking to do stuff like this, you know, it's good to do things, but it's like, oh, for God's sake.
Sorry.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love Pete. You know, I love it's promoting the game and it's brilliant. But then it's just, you know, I just sometimes you just want to get away from it, and you just want to lock yourself in your house. And this is me now. You know, I need rugby because I'm still involved in it, but sometimes it's just, let's just get away from it. Let's just
you need the physically tactile side of rugby. This isn't your biggest part of rugby, is it?
Yeah.
So
you've got to do your bit, because I understand the promotion of the game is huge.
Yeah, but you've also you've offered your life to rugby, mate.
Yeah. Well, I've had a lot from rugby, but I also understand that I can technically say a lot more things than what the players can do as well, because I do as
away from the game. Yeah.
I am, but I'm not. RLcares.
Yeah, no, I get. I didn't articulate that well. You are in the game, obviously, but you have a bit more freedom with it, don't you?
There's no personalities as much as what there used to be, because everything's that sanitised. You know, the game at the moment's being really sanitised because of external things that are happening, and I understand why. You know, but you've got to be whiter than white. You've got to be whiter than white. You know, so it makes your job even harder. Press conferences, same questions, same answers.
Yeah, I can imagine. So did Rugby AM help with that? Because you've been there, and could you ask the things that you wanted to ask, and you wouldn't have minded being asked?
Rugby AM were outstanding, absolutely outstanding, because it was at a time in my life when I didn't really have much going on.
Right.
Alex Simmons was behind it, so you know, Rugby AM. And again, that came about luck, because I think he asked Nick Fozzard to do it, and he were too busy at the time. Then somehow he ended up asking me. So we started Rugby AM on a Monday morning on a pirate radio station at 6:30 a.m.
Did you?
So, but we weren't press, so we had relationships with players.
Yeah, it's a different chat then, isn't it?
You don't know me.
Yeah.
There's certain things that you don't want to say. There's no relationship. It's quite challenging at times. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't know how people are going to take to me. I might ask this question. It might be offensive. Where we were like, I know him. He knows me.
Yeah.
We can have a crack. We can have a laugh. So we sort of like, we got the best out of people. We got the best out of the players. And we were just having a laugh. We were just having a good time. And, you know, it progressed really well from there.
Yeah.
We're a little bit like Football AM, obviously taken off that, but we were having people on that we all knew. Having players on that you knew, like, you can have crack where you know what to say, you know what's funny.
Yeah, I think that showed as well, mate. That's what I like, and that's partly why I do a bit of this, because I enjoy getting to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
I can't ask the questions as unfiltered as probably yous could and stuff, because I don't want to trip yous up either into saying something you don't mean and that. Yeah. So,
it's like Pete Smith, who does the Yorkshire Post for the Leeds games.
Yeah,
he does every Leeds game. He did my book. Great bloke, but he can't ask a challenging question to a player, because then they'll just fuck off. Don't you?
That's it. Close down. Yeah.
So he can't do what sometimes Brian Carney did on Sky Sports the odd time with some of the interviews when he went probing. Obviously, you know, I think it was with Kevin Sinfield once. He went probing and started really challenging some questions when he could do it, but he can't probe.
No,
he gets told what he can get told, and that is it.
Yeah, he's censored in what he can do and ask. Yeah,
and if he pisses one of them players off, it's just going to be so detrimental to him. So. he's got to be very careful in himself what he does. So I get it, but you talk to tell them what you want to tell them, not what they want to know.
Yeah.
So you could ask me any question, but I could transfer it to anything. I don't have to answer it. I could transfer it to whatever I just want you to know. Of
course you can, yeah. And that's the beauty of knowing yourself as well, mate, and that you can back yourself to do that.
Yeah.
So I've took loads of your time up, fella, so we'll do a few daft questions. And I already know you don't have this now after how cool you are in your warm-up, but did you have any pre-match superstitions whatsoever?
I did.
You did?
Yeah, I always put my left sock on my right sock, left boot, right boot. I never put my shirt on before I went out, so I'd never warm up in a shirt, apart from what I did it once with Great Britain, which was a Fiji game.
never done it again.
But before that, I never did it. I never put my shirt would be hung up until after the warm-up. We'd come in, team talk, I'd fold it on my knee, waiting for me, and then when it was time to go on, I'd put my shirt on. And then, this is a dirty one, this. If we had a winning streak, I won't wash my trunks until we lost. Right. So if we won 10 games on the bounce, we lost. So it was a good thing that we lost.
So the toughest player you played with, and again...
These questions.
Sorry.
These are
but the definition of tough is different to everybody as well. Yeah.
I'd say one of the most awe-inspiring magician was probably Jason Robinson. Just for what I'm glad that I never played against Rob Burrow. It was just exceptional. Yeah. Tough. I don't want to. I hate singling out individual. I never really had anybody that I thought would kill me. You know what I mean? I'm quite a bit more anyway. So the toughness aspect. Sonny Bill, I've seen kill a few people with a shoulder charge, but even, still didn't put fear into me and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's always, and I don't want to disrespect other people because I know how tough the game is, and I know everybody else pulling on that shirt is in the same category.
Yeah, mindsets and predicaments, mate, aren't they? Yeah. Right. So your favourite away ground, Keith?
Oof. I always played well against Hull FC, but I used to love the old Boulevard, and the old Salford ground.
Yeah, the Willows.
Oh, yeah. It was another level of intensity, because of the animosity. Straight away by coming out with a cage.
Yeah.
Straight away puts, it sends bells above you. I love the old grounds. I love them just because of, I grew up with them, playing with
the character and that.
The old Wigan ground, the old Central Park, and then when they moved to the JJB, it was just like, it's nice and new and pretty, and I grew up with that. I grew up with Central Park, the old Norton Park, Widnes, Salford, the intimidation of it, the old Boulevard. I love them old, but especially the hostile ones.
Yeah.
I love the crowd. And to be honest, I love getting shit from the crowd. I found it. With a banter and the crack, I used to always try and make sure that I used to have a little bit of a crack with the crowd. But I took that as a compliment. Because
you see it as a threat, obviously.
Right, that they're trying to get under my skin. Yeah. So I love the places where the crowd used to just
on top of you and that
shit. Yeah. I hate it now though, because I get loads of coaching. I had to get out and running messages on the pitch for Sheffield because you go to Batley and you go to Featherstone, and I've got 50, 60-year-old men and women hurling abuse at me, obscenities that even I wouldn't say. And it was just like, I'm doing my job. I'm doing what I can do. And I had no comeback because I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just like, what are you giving me shit for? I can't change the game. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my job. It's not like as a player, I can do something. I can't do anything by doing a substitution.
So if you've been out, mate, after a good win or like a weekend off or something, which you've probably rarely got, and the microphone ends up in your hand, what are you giving us on the karaoke, mate?
I'm an awful singer, but Otis Redding sitting on the dock of the bay, 'cause it's about 2 minutes long.
Yeah, nice and short. It's a tune, though.
It's short.
Yeah.
Or New York, Frank Sinatra.
Yeah,
I've got quite a deepish voice as well, so I can meet the Rangers because I can't get any high.
No, sound, mate, and it's up to you because obviously you don't want to single people out sort of thing, but if you'd be up for it, a 1 to 13 that you played with, not a problem, mate. Do you know what? Paul Newland didn't do it either.
Every time I do this, it changes.
Changes.
A few times and I've changed it every time.
Yeah.
I've played with some outstanding players. Some absolutely outstanding players. The only thing I need to do, Barry McDermott would be in it because every time I don't put him in, he sends me a message and sulks. Well, I just need to say that Barry McDermott.
Barry back 1 to 13, captain and kicker.
He's in every position. just so for once he can say, yes, you put me in.
Right,